Are you dreaming of visiting Switzerland? Planning a trip to Switzerland is very exciting, but it can also be overwhelming. How do you choose which of the many scenic cities, towns, and villages to visit? Which mountaintop excursions should you take? And what's the best way to get around Switzerland? And of course, how much of the country can you realistically see within your time frame? If you've asked yourself any of these questions, this is the podcast for you. This is the Holidays to Switzerland travel podcast, and in each episode, your host Carolyn Schonnefinger chats with Swiss travel experts to answer your most commonly asked questions, provide practical tips, and take you on a virtual visit to the most popular destinations, and of course some hidden gems to help you plan your dream trip to Switzerland. And you'll hear plenty of conversations about Swiss cheese and chocolate too. Are you ready to plan your trip to Switzerland? Well, let's get started.
Grüezi, welcome to another episode of the Holidays to Switzerland travel podcast. With what is probably the world's most recognisable mountain as its backdrop, it's not surprising that Zermatt is one of Switzerland's most popular tourist destinations. The iconic Matterhorn has drawn visitors from far and wide for centuries, and it still remains one of the most impressive sights in Europe. I can still remember my first glimpse of the Matterhorn. It was simply breathtaking. And even on more recent visits to Zermatt, I'm still in awe every time I look up and see the mighty peak. Whilst there's hardly a spot in Zermatt where you can't see the Matterhorn, to get even better views, there are a number of mountain excursions you can take, each offering a different perspective. We're going to hear all about those excursions in today's episode, so you can choose the one that appeals the most to you. First up, I'm joined by Catherine Wichmann from Zermatt Bergbahnen, or Zermatt Cable Cars, who is going to tell us about the excursions to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise and Rothorn. Then Gabi Aberli from Matterhorn Gotthardbahn has all the details for planning an excursion to Gornergrat. Whichever excursion or excursions you choose, you're in for a real treat. The panoramic views are incredible, so be sure to pack your camera, because if you need the perfect shot, you need Switzerland. Before we hear from Catherine, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Switzerland Tourism, sponsors of the podcast. Make sure you visit their website, myswitzerland.com, for loads of information and inspiration to help plan your trip to Switzerland. Good morning, Catherine. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Good morning, Caroline. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm very happy to be talking to you today about the wonderful excursions that we can do in Zermatt. So could you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role with Zermatt Bergbahnen?
Yes, of course I can. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is Catherine Wichmann, or Catherine Wichmann, and I have been working for the cable cars in Zermatt here for the past 3 years. I'm an international sales manager, and amongst other markets, I'm responsible for our Australian listeners.
Wonderful. And so you're not originally from Zermatt, is that right? Is the job that drew you to Zermatt in the first place?
Absolutely. I'm originally from Basel, where I grew up, and I lived most of my life. And then I moved to Zermatt 3 years ago for this position because I love the village and I love the life here.
Yeah. And I bet you love looking out the window from your office too and seeing that beautiful mountain behind you. Now,
absolutely.
Zermatt is well known worldwide because of the Matterhorn, the pyramid-shaped mountain, which you can see from pretty much anywhere in the town, and people might recognise it from the Toblerone packaging as well. It's quite a famous mountain peak. And a lot of the hotels in Zermatt have balconies so that people can wake up to views of the Matterhorn. But I know that if you want to get up and see the Matterhorn even closer, there are 3 excellent excursions that you can do from Zermatt. And there's 2 of them that I know you can tell us everything about. So let's start with the Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. So it is one of the excursions that we can reach thanks to the Zermatt cable cars. So what can you tell us about visiting Matterhorn Glacier Paradise?
So the Matterhorn Glacier Paradise is the highest cable car station in Europe. and it's reached from here in the village. You can board the Matterhorn Express from the village, and you can take it via Furi and Schwarzsee to Trockenesteg. And this is where you'll have to change cable cars. And then you can take another cable car from Trockenesteg up to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. So on the first cable car line from Zermatt to Trockenesteg, you can also get off on the different stops. If you feel like, going on little excursions or just having a look around. There's a wonderful walk, for example, from Furi, which is the first stop, to a suspension bridge or through the Gorner Gorge back to the village. And then also at Schwarzsee, we have a new photo point where people can take photos and take their holiday memory picture with the Zermatt letters. And then, you can continue on your journey to Trockenesteg. And this is where you'll need to change the cable car to reach Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. And on this route from Trockenesteg to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise, we have two different types of gondolas. So it's a 3S. So that means a 3-rope cable car. So it's very stable, even with strong winds. And on this cable car, where we run the two different cabins, the one cabin is the traditional Glacier Ride cabin, and the other one is the Crystal Ride gondola. And this one is quite spectacular because it has these milky glass floors. And once you board it, it's still you can't see through it. And then once you go into the ride, once you're over the glacier, that floor, it clears and you can see down onto the glacier, which is really, really spectacular, especially in summer.
Wow. Not for a scaredy cat like me who's afraid of heights.
It's safe.
I'm sure it's safe. I probably just wouldn't actually look down and appreciate it, though.
Yeah, I can understand that. But the views are still spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the trip to reach the Matterhorn Glacier Paradise is a highlight of the excursion itself. But once we get there, what sort of things can we see and do?
So what we usually recommend is when you arrive, is the first thing that you do is you go to the viewing platform. It's reachable by an elevator. So you walk down the hall, you get off the cable car, you walk down the hall, and there's an elevator that will take you up to the viewing platform. And it's a 360-degree viewing platform. So you can see all the surrounding mountains. That's 38 peaks that are higher than 4,000 meters. And you can see 14 glaciers from there. And wow. The views are really, really spectacular because you can actually see over to France. You can see Mont Blanc. You can see Italy. The views reach over to Italy because we are just on the border to Italy. And and you see the Matterhorn from a very different perspective. So the view of the Matterhorn changes as you move along the mountain. And then, and then once you've visited the viewing platform, there's also the highest glacier palace in Europe. Which is when you take the elevator back down, you walk down the hallway, you can take another elevator that goes underneath the glacier. And there you can have a walk around. You can look into a crevice. Like if you look up, you will see in between the crevices. And there's like these ice sculptures everywhere that have been carved into the ice, and they get redone every year. So it looks really, really nice. And that's a stroll through the Glacier Palace. There's even a little slide there for children, so they can take a little pillow and they can slide around. And then, make your way afterwards back up with the elevator. We do recommend that people take it a bit slow because of the altitude. You can just, take your time, take it easy, and then take the elevator back up, where you then either go and have a sit in the cinema lounge where we've got these short movies playing. Or if you want to, you can also go to the restaurant and the gift shop where, we've got some refreshing and healthy meals and some local gifts that you can bring home for your loved ones.
Great. And are there any kind of snow kind of activities, or is there the chance for people to actually touch snow or touch ice when they're up there?
Well, yes, there is. There is at the moment a little field in front that is reserved for snow tubing. However, this area will be moving to another place connected to one of our cable car projects, which will be opening 2023. So we're going to move the snow tubing area. But yes, people can step outside and touch snow. It's also the beginning point for the summer skiing because we've got 365 days of skiing here. There you will meet skiers up there all year round. And we need to have snow up there.
Yeah, great. So I'm assuming that if there's skiing every day of the year available up there, then all the places that you've talked about, the cinema and the glacier paradise, etc., they're all open all year round. The Glacier Cave.
Yeah, so this is all open. We go into revision only very shortly between the route between Zermatt and Trockenersteg is not entirely accessible, but that's only during a very short period of the year. And otherwise, you can access all these stations. And then on the other cable car line, when that goes into revision, we've got another cable car running in parallel. So apart from the glacier and Crystal Ride gondolas, we've got another big cable car running.
That's great to know, because I know it can be disappointing if people can only travel at a certain time of the year and they're desperate to get to the Matterhorn Glacier Paradise, and then it's, if it happened to be shut for 2 months for revision, that's so disappointing. But sounds
Absolutely.
like it's not going to be too much of an issue.
No, it should not be an issue. Actually, that excursion is open all year long.
Fantastic. So how long do you recommend that people allow for their excursion to the Matterhorn Glacier Paradise?
So we say that the trip one way from Zermatt to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise is about 45 minutes. So if we're looking at a return journey, we're looking at about an hour and a half, transferring time. Now, that's without getting off the cable car and having stops in between. So I probably would reserve minimum a half a day for this excursion. And I also recommend that people do it in the morning early, because once we look at the afternoon, it's just time gets tight. You can't explore all the opportunities up there. You're happy if you start earlier in the day. That doesn't mean a 7 a.m. start. That means, if you get started around 9, 10 o'clock, you're well served.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's better to have too much time than not enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. And is that excursion suitable for all ages?
So we don't recommend it for children under 3 years of age, just because of the altitude.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that many people listening to this podcast haven't realised that the Matterhorn is right on the border of Switzerland and Italy, and it's going to soon be possible to travel by cable car from one country to the other. So can you tell us about the new Alpine X cable car that's currently being built?
Absolutely. It's a very, very exciting project. We've been building it for a while. So the Matterhorn Alpine Crossing is due to open in 2023. And we are building a cable car connection between Matterhorn Glacier Paradise and Testa Grigia, which the length of that part is basically 1.6 kilometers. It takes 4 minutes, this part. But the special thing is that Italy will be accessible for our pedestrians. And from there on, you can continue on your journey to Italy, or you can actually start your journey in Italy and also make your way over to Zermatt. So you can start at the Valley Station here. You go up to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. You go on the Matterhorn Alpine Crossing. And then you basically are in Italy, where you can continue your journey down to Cervinia. And very exciting project. Also, for the comfort of our guests, we're looking at organizing luggage transportation, and most of the activities, like I mentioned before, we're going to have new activities at Testa Grigia, and some of the activities are also going to move there. So
okay, so you could, even if you're staying in Zermatt, head over on the cable car to Italy for lunch, and then be back in Zermatt in time for dinner.
That's the whole idea. Go and have
your passport.
Yeah, go have a pizza, go have some tiramisu or a nice espresso, and then, because what I said before is actually quite essential. The mountain does look very different. Once you're over in Cervinia, you do not recognize the Matterhorn. So it really, it's interesting to see this change of perspective, and the classic view you do get from the village here in Zermatt.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, the other mountain excursion that people can do is one that's probably not as well known, and that is to the Rothhorn. So what can you tell us about that? Because I understand that's a bit more for people who are perhaps into hiking or adventure sports.
Yes. I really enjoy the Roton area because of the views. So from the Roton area, so you can start your journey in the morning from the village of Zermatt, but it's a different cable car station. And you take a little underground cable car, 4 minutes, and then you end up at Suneka, and from there you can change onto another cable car to Blauhert, and from there you can change onto another cable car to Roton. And I think the special thing really is the views, because you get that traditional view of Zermatt and of the Matterhorn. So you can actually see the village or parts of the village underneath, depending on where you are in this area. And yes, it's a lot more the active part of the mountain. So from Roton, there's a restaurant up there. You have really nice views. You've got the Peak Collection that you can have a big quick stroll through. And then Blauhert and Suneka are more outdoorsy, more adventurous areas.
Okay, so what are some of the things that people can do there?
From Blauhert, for one, we have the Fun Venture, which basically covers both of those stations. So you can grab a mountain cart and you can go from some mountain carts. Do you know what they are?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So these 3-cart vehicles, and you can sit into them and you can race down, still be careful, but you can go on a ride down to Suneka with the mountain carts, and there you can swap your mountain cart for a kick bike, and then you can ride the kick bike actually back to the village of Zermatt. So that's our Fun Venture. Those are our Fun Venture activities. And besides that, there are, other activities such as hikes from Blauhert. The 5 Lakes Trail is very well known. It's a beautiful hike in summer where you can, even have a dip in some of the lakes, or you can it's a beautiful, beautiful countryside, spot marmots. And then if you want to finish your trail in the area of Finland, which is just beneath Suneka, this is where there's a lot of gourmet restaurants. If you want to pull in for a nice meal in a mountain hut, then that's probably the thing to do.
Yeah, the 5 Lakes hike, that's one I'm hoping to do this summer. Can you give us a bit more info about that, how long that generally takes and where it's best to start from and finish?
So it really depends, of course, how fast and how fit you are. I would probably count on about 2.5 to 3 hours for the whole hike. And starting from Blauhert is probably the best place. There's also a special ticket for this that you can, take the cable car up to Blauhert and then back down from Suneka. So that's one thing I would recommend doing. Yeah, I think it really depends on how long it takes, how fit you are and how fast you also want to do it. That's if you want to relax along the way and maybe, roll out your blanket and have a little rest on a rock somewhere, that's the things that are open to our guests.
Yeah. So are there restaurants along the way, or only at Blauhert and Suneka?
There are restaurants along the way as well. So once you reach Stellisee, which is the first lake, when you start from Blauhert, there's a restaurant that's just like a few minutes off the path, and it's a restaurant Flual, which is really, really nice. And then there's along the other lakes, there's different restaurants as well that you can pull into. Yeah. I mean, it's also nice to bring a picnic, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
If you don't want to be carrying your stuff and your food and your drinks, then you can pull in one of the mountain restaurants.
Yeah, good. Now, you just mentioned Stellisee there, and when we were chatting earlier, you told me about this incredible sounding sunrise experience that people can do. So I'd love you to share that if it's not too big a secret.
No.
If you're happy for everyone to know, because I think it just sounds amazing.
This is actually my favorite excursion, and we used to run sunrise trips to Suneka or to Roton, and this year last summer we actually came up with, I'd say, the perfect solution. So we run a very, very early morning cable car. This is at the moment it's July and August. Last year it went so well that actually we expanded straight through September. So every Saturday morning we run a very, very early morning cable car, meaning around 4:30, 5 o'clock. It depends a bit when sunrise is. And yeah, you get the cable car ride up to Blauhert, And then everybody sets off on a little walk. I mean, it's about 15 minutes to reach Stellisee. And around this time of the day, it's super peaceful. It's easy to find the trail. There's also always locals there that, know where to go. And you set off on this little walk through the day starting in the mountains. And then when you reach Stellisee, usually people sit on the one side of the lake and you can watch sunrise. And you can see the reflection of the Matterhorn actually in the lake. It's peaceful. It's mind-blowing. And then you can see the sun rise. And the sun actually rises on the other side. So it's like the Matterhorn gets lit up by the sunlight. It starts at the top. And then it's like that whole pyramid shape just starts from the top on down, lighting up in the sunlight. And then, after about, I don't know, maybe half an hour or so, I think people sit usually for about a half an hour. And I like the whole atmosphere too, because it's so early in the morning and everybody's just enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. After that, you can set off onto a walk, and included in the ticket is also breakfast at the restaurant Fluat that I mentioned before. And so you just continue your walk for another 10, 15 minutes. You have breakfast there with, eggs and ham and also, croissants and all the good stuff that you can have for breakfast. And then depending on what you want to do with your day, you can either set off, for example, on the 5 lakes hike and do the other 4 lakes, or you can make your way back to the station. So that's maybe 20, 25 minutes, half an hour to make it back to the station, and then take the cable car back down to the village and start your day.
Well, I have to say to the listeners that you were kind enough to share some photos with me, and wow, they were just absolutely amazing. So I'll include those in the show notes for this episode so people can have a look and see what we're talking about, because it's just mind-blowing, like you said. And I'd encourage anyone who's visiting Zermatt in July or August to try and be there on a Saturday and do this trip, because I might have to try and reschedule my visit, I think, to make sure I can include it, because that just looks so amazing.
It is. And, the interesting thing, I'll just quickly say this about the photos. On the first time we went, we were not sure about the weather, right? Because there was a bit of, you have a bit of clouds. That actually brought the really, really nice effect out in the photos. So I liked the excursion so much that I did it a second time as well, and just a few weeks later, and that was not the same, right? I mean, if you have a clear blue sky, it's beautiful as well, but the whole mystic atmosphere from those photos comes from, just having just a few clouds in the sky. Of course, if it's overcast, that's a different story.
Yeah. Well, it sounds wonderful regardless of whether it's blue sky or cloudy. I think it's something that, everyone should probably experience once in their lifetime. Okay, so is the excursion to Rawtorn available all year round?
So actually, this excursion is, we go into revision twice a year here as well, like on the other side. But on the other side, we've got gondolas running in parallel. But for Sunneka-Rawtorn, we actually don't have any cable cars running in parallel. So we go into revision now, which is, it's like in the beginning of May. For a few weeks, and then in October again. So right now we're winding down from the ski and winter season, and then during the summer we're open, and then till October. In October we close for probably another 2 or 3 weeks just for the revision again, so we're ready for the winter season.
Okay, great. So for the listeners who are heading to Zermatt and they're planning to do one of these excursions, do they need to book their tickets in advance?
They can if they want to. They can, gladly jump on the website, Matterhorn Paradise, and go and book their tickets. But you can also spontaneously book here. Since it's a cable car, they run around in circles or back and forth, and the waiting times are rather short. So you can also get a ticket here on site.
Okay. And are there any discounts available?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're traveling overseas, you might be traveling on a Swiss travel pass. So this is valid for the excursion section of, Matterhorn Glacier Paradise or Sunneka-Rawtorn.
Okay. So that's 50% off.
Yes.
Great.
Depending on the ticket, but most of them are 50% off.
Do you have any tips that you'd like to share with our listeners who are planning a visit to Zermatt?
I think the main thing is when you come here is just to enjoy your time, to relax and to unwind. I think the village and also the mountains surrounding the village have a lot to offer for our guests. We do usually recommend to, not only spend like a day because the travel time can take a bit, so you can actually get the max out of it and just soak up the atmosphere. I think that's what really makes Zermatt and the Matterhorn and the area around here so special.
Yeah, I totally agree. You mentioned earlier the Matterhorn Paradise website. Where else can people follow you and find out more information online?
So we're also, of course, we're on our website, but we're also on Instagram and on Facebook. So if you want to follow us there, you guys get newest updates and newest pictures, and you can see what's happening in the area. So that's definitely worth it.
Excellent. Well, I'll include links to all those different places people can follow you in the show notes for this episode. Thank you very much, Catherine. It's been wonderful talking to you and learning all about the 2 excursions that Zermatt Cable Cars offers.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to, inspiring some people to maybe visit.
I'm sure you have, without a doubt. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Wow, that sunrise trip to Stellasea sounds so good. I'm not usually an early riser, and I'm not a huge fan of cable cars as I'm scared of heights, but I would definitely push myself out of my comfort zone to experience that. And how about having breakfast in Zermatt, lunch in Cervinia in Italy, and then back to Zermatt for dinner, thanks to the soon-to-be-opened Alpine X cable car? How cool would that be? But don't decide on your Matterhorn excursion just yet, because there's another one to consider too. Good morning, Gabi. Thank you for joining me today to talk all about the Gornergrat.
Good morning, Carolyn. Great to be on the podcast, and happy to share some information and the highlights of this very special day excursion from Zermatt.
Yeah, wonderful. So would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be working for Matterhorn Gotthardbahn?
Yeah, so the name of the company is Matterhorn Gotthardbahn. I moved to Switzerland probably 12 years ago. Was working for Cooni, for example, and then I saw the ad that they were looking for someone who is selling Glacier Express internationally. So I applied for that. So it was mainly because of Glacier Express. And because I'm working for Matterhorn Gotthardbahn, they also sell this day trip I was talking about to Gornergrat. And in the end, I was also selling one of the best day excursions from Zermatt up to Gornergrat, which is absolutely great. And my background is in tourism. So yeah, this was kind of a roundup of my training in the travel agency and my studies. And I'm really happy, and I'm working for the company for 8 years right now.
Okay. Oh, that's great. So you mentioned there the Glacier Express. What other railways are the company responsible for?
Well, Matterhorn Gotthardbahn is basically covering all local trains between Disentis, which is, I would say, a 3 hours train ride from our headquarters up to Zermatt. And this is a service we offer together with the SBB for public transportation. Then we operate the shuttle between Tash and Zermatt, because as you might know, Zermatt is a car-free resort and you need to leave your car and get to the city center. So this is something we offer as well. And our last or main product is then the ride up to Gornergrat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's quite some variety there. You've got one of the premium panoramic trains, you've got the local trains, and the mountain train up to the Gornergrat.
Exactly.
So what's the history behind the Gornergrat Railway?
That's a very interesting story, because tourism in Zermatt started basically when some British guys got on the Matterhorn, which was in about 150 years ago. And after that, tourism started in Zermatt. So the railway track between Visp and Zermatt was built in 1891. Mm-hmm. And after that, a lot of tourists ended up being in the city center of Zermatt. And Zermatt is located surrounded by high mountains. So to get up on these mountains, you would need either to hike, which most of the guests didn't want to, or use mules, which they did. So they got up to viewing points all around Zermatt. One of them is Riffel Alp Resort, and another one is the Riffel Alp Resort, and the other one was Gornergrat. And because of the new train ride or the train connection they had, it were much more people than they could actually bring up to the mountain. And at some point, they decided that they would like to build some sort of a train going up to Gornergrat just to cover all the tourists who wanted to see the Matterhorn. Because from the Gornergrat, you have the best view to the Matterhorn due to the undisturbed 360-degree view towards the Matterhorn.
Yeah. I'm lucky enough to have been up to the Gornergrat a couple of times, and it really is amazing. The views, as you said, 360 degrees, they're incredible. Now, for our listeners who aren't familiar with the Gornergrat, can you tell us a bit more about what would they expect on an excursion there from Zermatt?
Yeah, so when they start from Zermatt, they would get on board of a train, could sit down and just relax, of course. And the train ride would take about half an hour to bring them to the top. On the way to the top, there are a couple of stops where you could get off the train and could already start with some hiking, or you stay on board of the train and then get up to Gornergrat. Gornergrat is about 10 kilometers or about 8 miles away from Zermatt. And there is a train leaving every 24 minutes from the train station in Zermatt. On the way up there, you will have the view of the Matterhorn on your right-hand side, basically all the time. So one of the best seats to take is actually on the right-hand side of the train when you get on board of the train. The scenery is changing because you start in the village, then you are still within some trees. But after a while, the trees end and you just have this high alpine region where you see all the different gorges, you start to see glaciers. You will see the typical flowers and plants up there. You will see a couple of different animals like mermaids, which are playing around the track sometimes. And you will see some goats, you will see some sheep. And if you're lucky, at the top, you will be able to see even some ibex.
Okay, but plenty to see on the way then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about when the visitors get to the top and they hop off the train? What are some of the things that they can do there?
A lot. We just opened a new multimedia experience, which is called Zoom the Matterhorn, which is located inside the old cable car station, which we just refurbished. And inside the experience is, first of all, a virtual flight around the Matterhorn, where you have these special virtual reality glasses you put on your head. Then there are swiveling chairs, and because you're sitting in one of those chairs, have the glasses on, you feel like you're flying around the Matterhorn with a paraglider, which is great. The next stop would be a cinema where you can experience all 4 seasons at the Matterhorn, where you have a 3D experience as well because wind is blowing and it's warm and you hear animals, and they also have put some artificial snow which is coming down, so stuff like that. And the last area would be where you have very, very strong binoculars and you can actually see towards the Matterhorn. And on a good day, when you have mountain climbers coming down from the peak, you are able to see them with those special binoculars. So this would be the program for a very good day when the weather is nice and the sun is out. It's also a good option if the weather is not that nice, because then you see the Matterhorn, although it might be in clouds, because we have all kinds of explanations and photos and stories about the Matterhorn in this experience or in this venue. So if the weather is not that nice, it's also a great option to experience what the Matterhorn actually means. When you've done with that, I would recommend that you get into the bigger building, which is up there. On the first level, you have a small shopping mall where you can buy all things Swiss. So, for example, some knives or some backpacks with the Swiss cross on it. Then get up the stairs where you do have a self-service and an a la carte restaurant. And the best thing to do is to sit on the sunny terrace, view of the Matterhorn, of course, in front of you, maybe a glass of wine or a glass of champagne, and enjoy the view. And if you've done that, then you got enough energy, I think, to get to the best viewing point, which is our viewing platform. On the viewing platform, again, the 360-degree view towards this arena of mountains. And you will see in total 29 mountains, which are higher than 4,000 meters, which is a little bit higher than 10,000 feet, including the Matterhorn, meaning it's, of course, more mountains. But what you will see are these 29 really high peaks from the viewing platform. If you still have the power and the energy, you can walk around the peak. It's called a loop walk, takes about 20 minutes. And the good thing is you are away from the crowds. On the viewing platform, it can be very busy, but if you do this little loop to get back to the hotel, you will be all by yourself. I can guarantee that after you are around the first bend of this little path.
And I think probably something that not a lot of people expect when they go to Gornergrat is to see the glacier.
Of course, when they are up there and get out of the train or actually already on the way up, they will have a whole wall, I would say, of glaciers. And the most famous one it's called Grenz Glacier. Then there's the Gorner Glacier and a couple of other glaciers. And yes, you will be very, very close to them. And what you can do when you are in Zermatt, you can actually hike over those glaciers to a little hut, very modern hut, and spend the night there and then walk back. But when you're up on Gornergrat, you see the whole glory of this high alpine mountain area from where you are standing when you get off the train. It's basically, it's all over. The best view is when you get off the train on your right-hand side when going up to the hotel, which is on the top.
Those views, you can never get sick of them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, last time I was there, we took the train all the way up to Gornergrat, and then we did stop on the way down. So we hopped off at Rottenborden. I think that's the correct way to pronounce it. And then we hiked down a little way to a lake that people probably will have seen on Instagram or social media, called the Riffelsee.
Right.
And the views of the Matterhorn reflected in the lake were just incredible. But one thing we didn't see when we hiked down there that day was some four-legged creatures that I know are very popular, and I'm hoping to see them on my next visit. Can you tell everyone what the special four-legged creatures are?
Of course I can. We call them also locals. They are the so-called black-nosed sheep, which are specific in only around in the Valais region. And the pictures you see from Zermatt, you will see them on the pictures. And what's special, they do have white wool and their faces are black, hence the name black-nosed sheep. And what we did starting last year, we actually rent a flock of them for the next 5 years. So we don't own them. We basically rent them. We do have a shepherdess. Her name is Deborah. She's with the sheep when they're up in the Alps. And she is also able to answer questions because you can, of course, walk to the sheep and, take pictures with them, give them some grass to eat, whatever it is you want to do. So they are going to be up in the mountains around the area of Riffelalp and Riffelboden, where starting mid of June, because it needs to be free of snow because they need some food, obviously, till probably mid of September. And as they do have GPS trackers around their necks, you are able to find them on our website and then walk towards them. So you don't have to look in the whole area. They are kind of easy to find.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. So because they're roaming freely and people can just go and find them. So they don't need tickets to actually go and see the sheep. But
No.
if they want to, find the shepherdess or learn some more, is there any need to buy a ticket or anything for that?
Yeah, we do offer guided tours on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Usually the meeting point is up at Gornergrad, and then a guide from Zermatt, we work together with the Zermatters, is taking you to the sheep, and you will have the possibility to feed them their special treats, so not just grass. And Deborah will answer your questions. So if you like to be with someone who is leading you to the sheep and who's guiding the tours, you can do this on Saturdays and Wednesdays. But again, if you're just in the area doing a hike down from Riffle Lake, you can do this by yourself. There is no need to buy an extra ticket. The guided tours are just an option if you don't want to do this by yourself.
Okay. Oh, that's great to know. So should people book tickets in advance for the Gornergrat Railway?
It would help them to get on board a little bit faster, of course. But I'm quite frank here. We don't have really a limit when it comes to people traveling up to Gornergrat, meaning, yes, of course, if you miss one of the trains, you might need to wait a couple of minutes. Again, the trains are leaving the station every 24 minutes. So that's not a long waiting time in high season. Plus, if we know, and we do have our data there, that we have to expect a lot of people, we do have extra trains as well. So there is usually the waiting time is not that that I think you should be worried. And the tickets can be bought either at one of the desks there. They can be bought at Zermatt Tourism. They can be bought at one of the ticket machines which are located in the station. So it's kind of easy to get the tickets, and there is no really need to buy them in advance.
Okay, great. And what discounts are available for travellers for the tickets?
Yeah, a lot of travelers coming from the US or Australia or abroad from somewhere else usually do have these Swiss travel passes, and we offer a 50% discount for those who are coming with the Swiss travel pass or one of the Swiss flexi tickets or the half fare cards, which are available as well. So yes, you get a 50% reduction. And when it comes to children, just to mention that, they are free of charge basically till they're 6. And from 6 to 16, they pay 50% as well.
Great. And is the Gornergrat Railway open all year round?
We operate all year round. And because we are not a cable car, we usually don't have problems when we do have high winds with other cable cars. They need to stop operating. This is not an issue for us. And as far as I remember, we had one day last year, when it was even for us too windy and we stopped operation. But this was in November, and I guess most of you will not travel up in November, will be there around either winter season or summer season. So yes, we are open 365 days a year.
Great. So for those people who are thinking of going up to the Gornergrat, how long should they allow for the excursion? Is half a day enough?
Half a day is enough if you just want to go up, do one of the things I mentioned. For example, hike down to the Riffle Lake we were talking about. At the Riffle Lake, you have this mirror effect of the Matterhorn, and you can do this all together in about half an hour, I would say, starting from Rotenboden. If you intend to spend a little bit more time on the mountain, for example, hike all the way down to Zermatt, or do a hike around the peaks or get in another area, then you would probably need a day. But to see the view and to have a glass of wine up in the restaurant, half day is enough.
Okay, excellent. Do you have any tips or anything we haven't talked about that you think our listeners should know about?
I would like to mention an offer we do have, which is called Gourmet Ticket. And the Gourmet Ticket basically is a starter at the highest peak of Gornergrat at the Kulm Hotel. So you get some typical valley specialities like bacon, like some dried meat, for example, you also get a glass of champagne and you start at around 11 o'clock. After you finish that, you go to the next stop, which is Riffel House. At the Riffel House, you get a 3-course menu, again, with the best view to the Matterhorn, because the terrace is just viewing the Matterhorn and a little bit further down. And after that stop, you then take the train again, or you can hike to Alpite, which is a very special hut, a little bit further down again, where you will have tea, coffee, and cake. And you can spend the whole day basically just walking or taking the train and eating and going back to Zermatt. And this is a great option for families, I would say, or groups. If somebody is not a good hiker, they can take the train. In winter, they can actually, you can ski from one stop to the other. And those who don't want to ski or are not good at hiking, they can take the train, and you can still enjoy the time together and enjoy the very, very nice food they offer at those 3 stops.
That sounds ideal.
Yeah.
Beautiful food, something lovely to drink, and gorgeous views. It's
exactly.
Sounds like the perfect day out.
Yeah.
And where can our listeners find out more about Gornergrat?
I recommend to go to the website, which is www.gornergrat.ch. If you put it in Google or just put Gornergrat, you will find it, of course, as well. And you get all details and all information you need on the website. And you could also buy your tickets right there.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Gabi. I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people to visit Gornergrat. I know Zermatt is a very popular destination with international tourists, and the Gornergrat excursion is a really great one. So sure, lots of people will be buying their tickets and heading up there very soon.
I hope to see them all up there. And thank you for having me and for the invitation.
My pleasure. I'm sure you can see why Zermatt is one of the most popular destinations in Switzerland. As well as being a well-known ski resort, the mountain railways also provide the ideal transport for non-skiers to get up close and personal with the Matterhorn at any time of the year. Are you going to head to Matterhorn Glacier Paradise to visit the viewing platform or Glacier Palace? Do the adventure activities or hiking opportunities at Rothhorn or Blauherd appeal to you? Or are you going to hop aboard the Cogwheel Railway to Gornergrat to go in search of the black-nosed sheep? One thing's for sure, one day in Zermatt is never enough to experience all the incredible excursions on offer. You'll find details of the excursions we've chatted about today, including the activities available at each of the different mountain summits, in the show notes for this episode. I'll also include Catherine's stunning photo of the sunrise at Stellersee, and links to the Zermatt cable cars and Gornergrat websites. There are links to purchase your excursion tickets or Swiss Travel Pass, and a number of helpful articles about Zermatt for you to browse too. You can find the show notes at holidaystoswitzerland.com/episode 51. If you need some help planning your time in Zermatt or elsewhere in Switzerland, my Switzerland itinerary planner could be just what you're looking for. It includes more than 20 suggested Switzerland itineraries for durations ranging from 3 days to 2 months. Plus, there's a suggested 2-day itinerary for Zermatt and 6 other popular Swiss destinations, including the major highlights, where to stay with luxury, mid-range and budget options, and where to eat. There's also practical tips for getting around Switzerland and much more. I'll include a link to the Switzerland itinerary planner in the show notes too. Again, you'll find those show notes at holidaystoswitzerland.com/episode 51. Thanks very much for joining me today. Until next time, tschüss.
If you'd like more great resources to help you plan your dream trip to Switzerland, there are lots of ways to connect with us. Visit our website holidaystoswitzerland.com, sign up for our monthly newsletter, or join our friendly, helpful community of past and future travellers in our Switzerland travel planning group. You'll also find the links to connect with us in the show notes for this episode. Show notes and a list of all previous episodes are available at holidaystoswitzerland.com/podcast. Don't miss out on your fortnightly dose of Swiss travel inspo. Hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating. That's all for this edition of the Holidays to Switzerland Travel Podcast. Thanks for joining us and happy travel planning.